With the recent battle rating changes coming to War Thunder, I wanted to re-rank every single top tier jet, especially now that we have decompression. Let's just get some disclaimers out of the way though first. First of all, this is just my opinion. I'm sure some of you guys will disagree with me on some of these placements. Second of all, this is on their viability as an air-to-air platform. So while some of these aircraft may be good as a strike or multi-role platform, they just aren't suited for air-to-air. Starting things off for the US, we have the F-5E. While this thing used to be great, we're no longer in a gunfighting meta. And when you can barely go Mach 1 on the deck, and your only choice of missiles is 2 AIM-9Js, you're not really going to be able to keep up anymore. While it still can be pretty fun to play, it just isn't suited for the meta anymore, and I'm gonna have to put it in the D tier. The F-4E is a lot better off than I realized. While it's kind of outclassed in a lot of ways by basically all of the new top tiers, it isn't unplayably bad if you catch my drift. Plus, your armament kit is still pretty decent, and having 8 missiles is not something you can ignore. I'm gonna put it in the C tier. The F-4J is a pretty terrible airframe. However, you can't really go wrong with Pulse Doppler and AIM-7Fs. Plus, the helmet-mounted display is a pretty neat gimmick. It's gonna go in the B tier. The F-16 is very annoying to play as, but you can't ignore the strengths it has. It has a really good armament kit, and you have some of the best, if not the best, thrust-to-weight ratio in the game. You have a lot of control over the skies, and this is a very easy S tier. Same goes for the F-16A ADF. Despite being 11.7, the F-14A still rules the skies. You have the best BVR kit, and the AIM-9Hs aren't really anything to scoff at in terms of infrared missiles. Sure, 18Gs isn't preferable, but the range that the AIM-9H has is very good to use on the F-14 platform. Plus, you can't beat this thing in a dogfight outside of maybe being in the F-16. Easily S tier. The MiG-21 BIS is not really bad, but not good anymore either. You still have insane engine power to stand on, but with how much energy you bleed, it isn't worth it anymore. At least your armament is still decent, R-60Ms are good missiles, and you have R-13M1s if you want to have a longer range option, though they're only rear aspect. It's gonna solidly sit in the C tier, but it's not the best pick you really have anymore. And the Lazur-M is just blatantly better than the MiG-21 BIS SAU, as it's a MiG-21 BIS without the large countermeasure pod that the SAU has to take, which adds extra drag. If the Su-22 had R-60Ms, I'd put it higher, but as it stands, having only default R-60s, and being a really fat and heavy airframe with not that much thrust to make up for it, makes me have to put this in D tier. The MiG-23 MLA is incredibly solid. I'd say it's still meta. It's gonna go in the A tier. I mean, you have access to R-24Rs, which are some of the best radar missiles in the game, and once again, R-60Ms are nothing to scoff at. Oh, the Tornado, it is such a terrible air-to-air platform. At least Germany has the best Tornado with the best engines. Still, it doesn't turn, it doesn't hold energy, and you only have access to 2 AIM-9Ls. It's going in the F tier. The Russian MiG-21 BIS is in the same boat as all the other ones. It doesn't have premium bonuses, so I'm putting it below the laser, but it doesn't have to take a large countermeasure pod to be able to have flares, so it's going above the SAU. Solidly in the middle of all the MiG-21 BIS, in the C tier. A lot of you probably haven't played the Su-17 M4 before, so you're going to question this placement, but I think it goes at the top of C tier. I'm a believer. You have 6 R-60Ms to sling off with basically no discretion, plus you have a lightened airframe and the strongest engine, and you hold energy very well, and the swing wings let you have some semblance of maneuverability despite being a strike platform. It's what you want in all of the Su-17 or Su-22 airframes, and having actually good armament really counts. The Su-22 M3, on the other hand, is heavy and only has access to regular R-60s, and does not have as much thrust. It's going down there with its similar brother, the Su-22 UM3K. The MiG-23M, just the base one, has been power crept in today's day and age. You still have a full all-aspect loadout to hold on to, so you can still get some kills, but it's just really heavy and the swing wings don't help it that much. And it bleeds speed pretty bad from what I've experienced. I'm gonna have to put it in the D tier, as it doesn't really hold up to the current top tier, but it does get some down tiers, which I'm not factoring into this tier list, but I wouldn't blame you for playing it. The MiG-27M is in the same boat as the MiG-23M, however, you have even less missiles, and you're even heavier than the MiG-23M. The only redeeming quality is the GISH 630 cannon, which is really fun to use, but ultimately makes it a worse aircraft than the MiG-23M. The MiG-27K is the same as the MiG-27M in terms of air-to-air, however, it's at an even higher battle rating, so I'm going to put it below the MiG-27M. The MiG-23ML is basically identical to the MiG-23MLA, and it's going to go up there with it. However, from what I've heard, it's ever so slightly heavier, so even though it has premium bonuses, because the actual performance is like maybe 0.01% worse, it's going to have to go in the A tier below the MiG-23MLA. I would have switched the placements last patch, but I actually think in this meta, the MLD is better than the MLA. I think the extra AOA gives you just a little bit more edge in order to get the angles to shoot off your R60Ms. You're going to need it against stuff like the F-16 and the Tomcat, which synergize with each other very well, so I'm going to put it in the top of A tier. Nobody is surprised that I'm putting the MiG-29 in S tier, however, I actually think it's better than the F-16. The R-27ER is the best radar missile in the game, and R-60Ms are still perfectly fine. It's just that the F-16 gets teamed up with the F-14, which synergize with each other so well that it kind of props the F-16 up a little bit. However, I still think the MiG-29 is the better aircraft overall. An F-4J with no helmet and only access to sky flashes is significantly worse than the American F-4J. I'm going to have to put it in the C tier. The Phantom FGR2 and the Phantom FG1 are basically identical to the F-4J UK, however, you have access to SPAY engines, which give you insane acceleration, which is going to prop them up above the F-4J UK. A lot of British players are going to disagree with me putting the Harrier GR.7 at the bottom of C tier. You have a good kit in 4 AIM-9Ls and unlimited flares. However, I think it being subsonic really brings it down. You have no authority over the match, as anybody who doesn't want to fight you just doesn't have to. And with the current state of the AIM-9L, it isn't unflareable anymore, which makes it significantly worse, which is why I'm putting it at the bottom of C tier. The British Tornado actually happens to be the worst one, so it's going below the already garbage German Tornado, which has better engines. Still, the Tornadoes are absolutely awful air-to-air platforms, and thus they end up in F tier. The F-4EJ has the worst Phantom airframe at top tier, and because the Phantom airframe is already kind of out of style, you need good armament, and guess what the EJ doesn't have? You don't have access to sky flashes, so you're basically just relying on your AIM-9Js, or I guess AIM-9Ps in this case, which is an export clone of the AIM-9J. However, because of this, it's got to go at the bottom of D tier, and the ADTW is just a clone of the F-4EJ, so it's also down there. Though I'm going to put it above the Tech Tree one because it has premium bonuses. The F-4EJ Kai still has the same airframe. However, you have access to 4 AIM-7Fs, 4 AIM-9Ls, and the F-16 radar. It's basically a fat F-16, which is gonna boost it up to B tier, but you're still on the worst Phantom airframe in the game. The F-5A is basically identical to the F-5C, but you have access to AIM-9Ps, which are just copies of the AIM-9J. I don't know how this thing is still 11-0, it is pretty genuinely terrible. You know it's bad when I would rather have the Tornado than the F-5A. The Taiwanese F-5E is identical to the American one, however, you have access to your stock AIM-9Ps, so I'm going to put it just above the American one. The F-16 MLU is the best F-16 in the game. You have access to the Sparrows, but also you have the ground pounding ordnance of the regular F-16A. So it's going to go on top of all of them. The J-7D is basically a MiG-21 MF at 11.0, but it has access to PL-5Bs. Just because of the missiles, it doesn't go in F tier, but the MiG-21 MF at 11.0, no thank you. I don't get how the J-7E is still 11.0. It has some of the best flight performance in the game, and access to 4 of the best IR missiles in the game. One of the best. The PL-5Bs are just insane. They have a really short burn time, but also really long range, basically making them stealth 30G missiles. Easily goes in A tier. The J-8B is basically a MiG-21 bis Supreme. It's really long, which looks funny, and it has more engine power, though you sidegrade your 6 R60Ms to 4 PL-5Bs, which I don't think is a consistency trade-off, it's just a preference in armament. I'm going to put it above the MiG-21s though. The F-104S is a poor man's F-4E. You have AIM-9Js and you have the AIM-7 Sparrow, but you don't have the maneuverability of the F-4E with similar acceleration, so it's going to go at the bottom of C tier. And same with the F-104S TAF, it's basically the same plane. The big thing the F-104S does that the Harrier GR.7 doesn't is go fast. You really want to be able to go fast when you have the AIM-9L and really get the maximum range out of it. And off of this alone, I could put it high up, but it also has access to the S-Speed missile, which also makes it usable in BVR combat. I'm going to put it in B tier. The Italian F-16 is identical to the American ADF, and thus it's going to go right next to it. The Italian Tornado is also trash. It goes with all the other Tornadoes. I've seen a lot of people call the Mirage F1C a jack of all trades, and I think the better way to put it would be a jack of no trades. The airframe doesn't do any one thing good, but the engine also isn't that good either. And the radar really sucks. You at least have some funny missiles to use, and the Magic 2s are good, but they're no longer meta. It's enough to get it out of F tier, but it's going really down low in D. The Mirage F1CT is the same thing, just without one of its guns, and with ground pounding ordnance. And the Mirage F1C200 is just an F1C, but with premium bonuses, and the F1CT's ground pounding capabilities. The Mirage 2000C is solidly meta. You have some of the best flight performance in the game, but you're really limited by your missile loadout. Like I said before, the Magic 2s are good, but they're not really meta anymore, and the R530D just every once in a while decides that it just doesn't want to hit the opponent for whatever reason. Still, it gets to go in A tier. The Mirage 2000D, oh boy. A plane with no guns and its only self-defense is 2 Magic 2s? Sign me up. It's easily going at the bottom of F tier. The big thing the Israeli F-4E does over the American one is carry AIM-9Gs, which are so much better than the AIM-9J. Please don't witch hunt me for saying that. I know a lot of you like the AIM-9J, but the AIM-9G does quite literally everything better in every scenario. Plus, you have more versatility in your loadouts, so I think it really brings it up a lot. Like, high up in C tier rather than the bottom. The Kfir C.7 plays very similar to all the other Delta Wings in C tier, you know, your J8s, your MiG-21s, but it min-maxes it all the way up into high engine power, high ability to pull AOA, and thus it gets to sit on top of all of the other Deltas. The Israeli F-16A should be better than the American one, but Gaijin conveniently forgot to give it the extra flares it carried in real life. In anticipation, I'm gonna put it above the American one, but as it stands right now, it's identical. The Viggen is a decent airframe, but the JA-37C only carrying AIM-9Js, or I guess RB-24Js, holds it back a lot. I'm gonna put it above the FG Phantoms as they kind of play a similar role, but I would rather not have to take a gun pod. The JA-37D, on the other hand, really pushes the Viggen to its limits. It has unlimited countermeasures, basically, and you have access to 6 AIM-9Ls, which is the armament the Viggen wish it had. And now it finally has it, and because of that, it gets to easily go in the A tier. And anticlimactically, to end it off, The Finnish MiG-21 bis is identical to the Russian one, and thus, because I think it has a cooler paint scheme, it'll go right next to it, but below the one with premium bonuses. Hello everybody who skipped ahead, this is the completed tier list. You can find this on tiermaker.com if you'd like to make your own, or if you have any disagreements. Just try not to rant in the comments too much. I have a Discord server where if you want to post your own, you can easily do so. Other than that, that's all for this video, and make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, as I'm trying to hit 10,000 subscribers. With that out of the way, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.